It is finally time to talk some Rams football. We are 1-0 and the season is underway. Welcome to Dean's Sports Report, everybody. Appreciate you for tuning in. Today, I got my longtime friend and reporter for the Rams, Wyatt Miller, on the show to talk some ball. Wyatt, thanks for hopping on, man.
Appreciate you having me, Dean. Let's do it.
Let's go. This is awesome. It's been a long time coming. So, first of all, if you want to talk a little bit backstory of just what you do with the Rams, kind of how you got your position, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a staff writer for the team. Write stories for the website, interview players for videos that are posted on the site and app. Help with content ideation, that sort of stuff. Always been, my dream to do sports journalism and, cover teams, especially my hometown. Went to Syracuse for that, came back here and, this was an opportunity that just kind of showed up. I, worked really hard to, show that I was the right guy for the job and ended up getting it. And it's been awesome going into my second year covering the team. And love the opportunity, love the people, love the culture. So
love that. Much respect, man. No, I think you talk about it. I mean, us just being from LA, I think it's awesome to, cover a hometown team. I think it's, of course, like it's awesome to cover any team, right? But when you're covering a rival or covering like a division, like opponent, like it hits home when you're covering a team that, grew up kind of watching. So it's awesome. Much respect. I respect the grind. And it's awesome that we kind of, obviously met up at training camp and we're now here talking some ball. So 1-0, started the season off hot with a dub. The Texans were, how do I say it? I mean, not that I overlooked the Texans at all, but I overlooked how much of a defensive battle it was going to be. I mean, 14-9, the under definitely hit, and it was a defensive battle on both sides of the field. I think a lot of people were actually surprised how well the Rams defense looked. Obviously, the forced fumble late in the game, an interception, a couple sacks. Is there anything from the defensive side from the Rams that stood out to you first, like going into it? Because, we talk so highly about our offense, how, we have the stars, but it was really the defense that, came to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was, the biggest takeaway, like you said, is this defensive front, especially, is just really more connected going into year two. Last year they came out of the gate hot, but not complete. It was a lot of pressures, but not a lot of sacks. This week, they went up against the Texans O-line that was mostly remade during the offseason. They had a rookie left tackle. They got veterans on the inside, but only one was returning to the same spot, and that was Titus Howard, who was the only one that didn't give up a pressure. So it just felt like the opportunity for the Rams front to show like, all right, this is the year that we're going to put it together. And I think that's exactly what they did. Pressured CJ Stroud on 42% of his dropbacks. It was really just the way that they played together and the different fronts that they presented. They were moving Byron Young and Jared Verse to the inside, Braden Fisk to the outside. They were having a lot of substitutions along that line. And I think that really just showed how deep and how versatile that group is. And against a mobile quarterback like CJ Stroud, who, he's not Lamar Jackson where he's going to, run for 100 yards every game, but he can definitely maneuver in and out of the pocket. And I think their ability to kind of dampen his impact on the game was huge. And yeah.
No, well said, man. Definitely. I think my guy, DeMarco Farr of ESPN LA, also the sideline reporter for the Rams, he said it that Jared Verse is cut from the worlds of Aaron Donald. Like, he is going to be the next stud. He's going to be here the next decade and, putting up these types of numbers. Obviously, defensive player of the year last year, but kind of like you mentioned, he didn't really have that sack total that, I guess he should have had. And I don't believe he had a sack, but just the pressure he's able to put up is unlike no other. So I'm expecting definitely a big season from Jared Verse, along with some of the younger guys. I mean, we have a very young and hungry defensive front. So it's awesome to kind of, as a football fan, especially like as a fantasy football guy as well, it's like you're looking for you're looking for a lot of offense. You want to watch offense because, even if it's like a back and forth type of game, something like we saw like, Ravens Bills is up this past week, like it's just a little more exciting. But when you have a defense that, like, can get your back if the offense isn't playing like how it should be, then I feel like as a fan and, even just listening to Sean McVay talk about this team, like they feel very comfortable about where this defense is at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that really showed on Sunday. And, going back to Jared, he admitted himself that he thought that he left like 10 sacks on the table last year. And
Sure.
he really felt like he was able to take steps forward this offseason to be less predictable and to be in a position to finish more plays. I did a story on, how he added a speed rush or a more consistent one that he feels like he can, implement more during games. And one of the guys who trained him this offseason said, he's one of the most powerful people, if not the most, that he's ever coached. And he has, 50 guys that he's in the league with, that he's trained, that are in the league right now. So there's definitely probably unlimited upside with Jared and just the tools that he has. And I think if the rest of the front is as good as they seemed in this opener, then it's going to really carry this defense as a whole. And, allow every other aspect and every other level of the unit to just really play their role and do everything that they need to do to win games.
100%. I think if you told me at the end of the season, if Jared Verse had double-digit number in sacks, I would not be surprised. And I know, that'd be a big change from last year, even winning defensive rookie of the year. But I think he is a guy who, can be top 5 potential at his position. Sweet. So this is the funny part, because we talked about us both being fans, but at the same time, we have to take some sort of bias aside as like working for the team, working with the team. But I was looking at the NFL power rankings that came out for week 1. Do you know where they have the Rams at by any chance?
I did a like composite this morning. It's NFL.com. I think they were at like 10 maybe.
Okay. Well, the graphic I'm looking at, it's from Sportsline. It's like CBS Sports. They have him at 15.
Wow.
And man, do I think that's disrespectful. Again, bias aside, working, with ESPN LA, working with the Rams aside, 15 for a team that I believe could definitely contend for the Super Bowl. I think 15 is crazy because there's teams ahead of them that we can look at that actually lost last week, and like they weren't against good teams per se. You have the Chiefs, obviously they have to be there. You have I'll just go through the top teams above the Rams, and we'll see, maybe if there's a team or two that we think should not be there, because I think at worst the Rams should be top 10 right now. And I don't think that's a crazy take. But so it's Eagles, Ravens, Bills, Packers, Lions, Chiefs, Commanders, Bucks is top 8. Sure, that's fine. And then we go Broncos, Chargers, Steelers, Vikings, Niners, Bengals, Rams. I don't know. It just It doesn't, like, the Niners being there feels weird. They're injured now, and it's like, I guess you can't really play off injuries, but the Bengals barely beat the Browns. Sure, the Vikings looked great last night, but I don't know. It doesn't sit right to me. Am I making this up?
No, I totally get what you're saying. And power rankings can be a slippery slope, right? Especially early in the season. Like early last year, I remember, the Rams were getting put at, like 20 and stuff like that. And it's all subjective. And what I will say, being around the team, is that they view themselves as, one of the top teams in the league.
Sure.
Kevin Demoff, the Rams president, has said that this is the most talented and complete unit that they've had since they were in LA. And that to start the season at least. And I think that's just a real reflection of how they view the talent and the camaraderie and the, ability of this team and the ceiling. Because when you have a veteran like Matthew Stafford with an offensive line that's coming back, every single starter, and then you add Coleman Shelton, who, Stafford loves and who's been there before, came back after a year in Chicago, and you add Devontae Adams to that, who just opens up a whole new, aspect to the offense that wasn't available to them last year as much. And this is a team that, like you said, has real hopes for a Super Bowl and can definitely contend. So the external noise, I don't think is reflective of what they think they can be and how much they have in terms of faith in themselves on both sides of the ball.
Definitely. And in a weird way, I kind of like being the underdogs. Like this is how I was like my whole time, like in Colorado, like Deion Sanders, Shador Travis, like we were always the underdogs. Sure, we ended up 9-4, didn't win the Big 12 or anything, but when there's teams that and just like the media first of all, the Rams don't care about like what the media is saying at all. Like these players, these are absolute pros. Like they're not going to listen to a random graphics. Like, it's not going to get in their head at all. But I think it does say something that if they're looked a little down upon, if they're being a little underrated, I think the energy and the atmosphere in that room, like they want to prove people wrong. First, it's kind of, having a team where everyone's talking highly about them and you already feel like, there's the only way to go is kind of down if you don't have a perfect season, So maybe it's a good thing. I mean, we'll see. I think the Rams are definitely underrated, and it's going to be funny kind of going through the weeks, as long as we can stay healthy, seeing how we can progress up the charts, because I think it's going to be a pretty exponential increase by the end of the year.
Yeah. And like just quickly to that point, I mean, this is a group that really thrives off of being doubted. Like when you look at the types of guys on this team, Jared Verse was at Albany, Fisk was at, I think it was Central Michigan. Like there are a lot of guys on this team. Byron Young was at, a junior college. Like there are a lot of guys on this team that have made it, part of their identity to prove people wrong and to be better than people are saying they're going to be. So, like you said, these guys are pros, but I wouldn't undervalue how much being discounted drives some of these guys to be at their best, as much as they already are. They want to prove people wrong.
No, 100%. I mean, even talking about our main guys. I mean, Puka was not drafted high. Like Davante Adams went to Fresno State. Like these guys, I mean, there's something about just having that extra dog. But okay, sweet. So we talked a little bit about Davante Adams. Obviously, for me, it was pretty surreal just like seeing him wear that Rams uniform. Obviously, like saw him at training camp. I've seen, a bunch of stuff already, but see him out there, that first catch, like wiping off that big hit, getting back up, like it seems like he has some extra energy and, he wants to get that Super Bowl. Do you think, this is, again, bias aside, it's hard, but where do you think Puka and Davante rank as wide receiver duos in the league? Because to me, I think at worst, I'd put them at 3. I think I can give you like the top duos in the league right now, but I think at worst I'm gonna put them at 3 because sure we can put Jamar and T. Higgins up there, we can put AJ Brown and Devonta Smith up there. I think they're right there. Am I putting like Pickens and CeeDee Lamb over them? Hell no. Am I putting Tyreek Hill and Waddle? No. Like I think there's definitely a big gap with like the elite duos, but I think at their floor is at 3, and I think their ceiling can easily be a 1. I think if Davante Adams is playing, I guess like if he isn't playing his age and he's being that guy that we've seen the past decade, which obviously is a toss-up because injury prone and whatnot, but at their best level, I think Puka being a guy who could get 10 targets and average over 100 yards every game, like without doubt, I think this wide receiver duo should be probably at the it's hard to say, because I don't want to sound like I'm just like speaking off my ass, because this is what I do sometimes with Lakers, but I really think that Puka and Davante could be up there. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on talent alone, I feel like it's malpractice not to put them in the top 5, right? Just because of what they've proven. Like Puka Nacua has basically every rookie wide receiver record that you can have in terms of receiving yards, receptions, and Davante Adams. You talk about his age, but he's a guy that his skill set is going to age a lot more slowly than like burners, like Tyreek Hill, like you mentioned, and like other people where it's like his strength has always been in how he manipulates defenses and defenders with his mind and his feet as much as anything. And he still has that. Like you saw in, that first catch, he absorbed that contact, man. That hit was big. I was like, oh man, we're ready for a dogfight right now. That was that pretty much set the tone for how that game was going to be. It was going to be a defensive battle, and Davante just ran with it. And I love that.
Sure.
And, then Puka gets the head wound and comes back in. So
Right.
Those were great illustrations of what those guys are, which is just like absolute dogs who fight it out and who have all the talent to be, like you said, top 3, top 2, top 1 receiver duo in the league. And I think, if this offensive line stays healthy, if Matthew Stafford stays healthy, if the receivers stay healthy, then there's no reason that, those two guys can't each have 1,000 yards.
100%. We talk a little bit about Stafford. Obviously, year 17, 37 years old now. There's been so much talk like going into the season about his back. Is he going to be healthy? Is he going to start? He definitely shut the doubters up pretty quickly, because not many people are talking about, him being like, at first it was like, is he going to play at all? And he's already starting week 1. But I guess, being there, being a part of, training camp, seeing how practice has gone and everything, what do you think we're going to get from Stafford this year? Is it going to be more of like, I don't want to say like kind of playing it safe, but is there a world where he tries to just be like a systematic quarterback like we see some of these other guys do, rather than, obviously taking some of these bigger hits and kind of just shying away from doing the most, if that makes sense? Because we know, I mean, we get to the end of the season, like we need Stafford to be healthy. I'm not a Jimmy Garoppolo hater whatsoever, but there's definitely a big gap between having Stafford, having someone who, I mean, Garoppolo has experience as well, but you know what I mean? Like we want to go into the Super Bowl, into the postseason, into the wild card whatsoever with Stafford healthy. So do you think McVay is going to kind of script up a season as a whole, kind of having Stafford's health in mind?
To answer the first part of your question, no, I don't think there's any way that Stafford plays any other intensity level other than 100%. Because, I mean, even, every time that he's been asked in press conferences throughout, the end of the preseason, throughout the even through this week, are you out there worrying about your back? Is that in the back of your mind? And every single time he has not hesitated to say, absolutely not. You can't go out there and think about that. You can't have that in the back of your mind. You have to go out there and play football. And if that means taking some hits, then he's going to take some hits. And he did. That Texans D line is one of the best in the leagues. They have one of the best edge rusher duos in the league. And he took a couple hits and he popped right back up. And so I think, the system that McVay has for him is exactly how he wants to play. And if he has to hang in the pocket and make, for an extra split second so that he can open up a window, then he's going to do that every single time. And that's just the type of player that he is. Even going back to his Detroit days, like he was always that grinder, that guy that played through all the injuries, that dealt with everything that came with having that kind of situation around him. And now he has a good one, and he wants to make the most out of these last, however many years that he has in the league. And, that's not to say they're not going to be smart with him. I think practice and preparation wise, there's, things that he is doing to, like be at his best at all times. And just with, all the uncertainty and, kind of going back to the power rankings, I think Stafford's back was a lot of the reason why people kind of doubted this team a little bit and have them further down. Not just because of the injury, but because of the missed time during training camp. But honestly, I thought that he, like you said, just shut that all up on Sunday. He led the league in big time throws by PFF grading, which is, just like down the field into tight windows with 5. And he didn't have 5 in a single game all of last year. So like just to see that precision and that chemistry, he already has that with Puka. I think we're going to see it grow with Devontae more as the season goes on. But even that, that back shoulder ball on that third down the sideline, I think was a huge indication of what this tandem could be like. Yeah. And I really think that Stafford showed he is going to be Matthew Stafford until he can't be Matthew Stafford anymore. And right now he is still definitely Matthew Stafford.
100%. No, you always think about that one video of him like dislocating his shoulder, getting back up and, going down to score. He's definitely a dog. And I think it's it's easy for me, like as a fan and someone just watching, to be like, let's play it safe a little bit. Like, don't get injured. We need you for the playoffs. But I think when you're in there and you have that adrenaline, it's like it's either all in or nothing. So that makes sense. Sweet. So to cap it off, I would love to make a little prediction for the record going into the rest of the season. Kind of just like quickly going through just each game, just win or loss, and kind of see what win total we end up with, if that's cool.
Yeah, I don't know about every game, but I could give you a little prediction for like, what it's going to be for the rest of the season.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm thinking, I think, 10 plus wins is where this team, is like, that's the floor, right? Like you want to win more than that.
Last this 2 years have 10 wins. Like this supposedly should be a better team.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like I said, they view this as one of the most complete teams they've had since they've come back to LA. And so I feel like when you look at their schedule and especially, the division, there's not a lot of there's not a lot of certainty about what those other teams are going to be, right? San Francisco, you've got injuries.
Yep.
Trent Williams didn't play great in that first game. And you've got Seattle with a new quarterback. You've got Arizona, which has just kind of been middling in the last couple of years. And if you look at those 8 games, there's significant ability for them to win and win a lot. And people don't really sometimes take into account how much the divisional matchups make up, most of the schedule. And so when you're thinking about the entire season, I think those divisional games and their ability to win those will be huge. And obviously they have a lot of experience against those schemes, against those coaches. So when you really look at it all the way, I think, 10 plus games is not just doable, but expected.
No, I love that. My number is 12, and I think it's totally doable. I don't think there could be anything better imaginable than going into San Francisco and beating the Niners away, going into Seattle, beating Seahawks away. So I think those away games are definitely going to be interesting because, like you said, with the divisional matchups, we're playing against these teams twice. So, as I just hope we have more momentum going into later in the season because I think the schedule gets a little more brutal then. My man, thank you so much, Wyatt. Hopefully wishing the Rams the best, but I appreciate you. Hopefully, maybe later into halfway through the season, we can hop back on and kind of see how our predictions are doing. But other than that, thank you. Appreciate everyone for tuning in, and go Rams. Let's go 2-0.
Appreciate you, Dean. Thanks for having me on.